Coming up on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show.
We are building a software that allows customers to share the data, and sharing is a whole spectrum going from internally and privately share some data with your coworkers to release data to every citizen and everybody online. That's what we call open data. And we try to, and from the beginning, we've been working on that whole spectrum, and we believe that any kind of sharing improves society.
Open source software is mainstream, but open source data? Yeah, and it can be found in a datamart near you. The thinking is if you make your data freely available for all to use, all will improve it. It'll be made more consumable, you'll get feedback on how to use it, and perhaps counterintuitively, you'll learn how to value it. In this episode of the IoT Business Show, I speak with Nicolas Terpolilli about applying the open source ethos to data within the data exchange.
All this and more on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show. The people, the business, and the technology of the next generation internet. This is the IoT Inc. Business Show. And now, here's your host, Bruce Sinclair.
Hello and welcome to the IoT Inc. Business Show. This show is made possible by sales of my book, IoT Inc., published by McGraw-Hill, and the IoT Inc. Certified IoT Professional, or ICIP, online training and certification program. Become a certified IoT professional by completing the program's 3 courses: ICIP Technology, ICIP Business, and ICIP Strategy and Digital Transformation. Details of which can be found at www.iot-inc.com. That's www.iot-inc.com. With me today on the IoT Show is Nicolas Terpolilli. Nicolas is Chief Data Officer at OpenDataSoft, where he's in charge of building a network based on the data shared by his customers. This gives him a great perspective on data governance from both a technical and a business perspective. Nicolas, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation.
So what were you working on just before this interview? What's on your desk right now?
Yeah, so basically two different topics. First one would be we try to so OpenDataSoft data sharing platform, and we help people share and better govern their data. But obviously, we are not the best at governing our own data. So I'm in a project right now where I try to implement what I suggest to our customers do with our data on ours. And obviously, second topic would be trying to figure out how to improve our network. We get more and more customers relying on it and using a lot of data based on the network. So yeah. After the summer, after the vacation, it's important to start again and work on the network itself and make our customer happy.
Now, your customers, what percentage of them would you say are doing the Internet of Things versus not doing the Internet of Things?
I'd say a third of our customers are doing Internet of Things.
Okay.
It's a growing part. From the beginning, OpenDataSoft has been had a lot of different customers, starting with administration, city councils, public sector in general, and a lot of private sector, the companies that want to share the data. And in both worlds, we are starting to see more and more Internet of Things project, and I think we are starting to get out of that phases in Internet of Things where people were just wondering what to do with also sensors and also cheap sensors. And at some point, they figured out that intent, if you want to be smart, if you want to actually do something interesting with it, to share the data and to make the data available to the right people at the right moment with the right API, and that's where we are.
Okay, and now is the growth coming from the public side on IoT, like you were mentioning, smart cities, for example, or is it more the private sector?
It's really both. On the private sector, what is more evident part for Internet of Things, we got groups like Schneider Electric who start to implement huge solution based on OpenDataSoft, where they monitor buildings and I mean light, heat, everything within a building, and give access to the data to the building itself, to the companies that handle the building, and to their customers actually. So that's the kind of solutions that are starting to build, and it's quite impressive. But it sounds natural in the Internet of Things world. For cities, we are seeing more and more projects, most of the time smaller, but interesting too, where they want to monitor. We have, for example, a city council of like 25,000 inhabitants in Australia, where they want to monitor bins on the road to know if it's time to collect them or to collect the trash or not. And obviously they are using sensors and get the data into the platform and want to share the data. And that's something I think it will grow in both private and public sector in the future a lot, because sensors are commodity now, and anybody without even that much technical skills is able to do something, get the data, share the data, and build something with it. So that's great.
Yeah. Now, are you finding specifically for public, and then let's use cities as an example, these projects are funded by taxpayers, so the public. Are you finding that there is a part of the mandate is to make the data that's being collected available to the public because it's being funded by the public, or is that still working itself out?
I would say that depends on the market and where you are in the world. In most cases, in the US, I think that's the norm, that if you are public funded, you have to release the data, at least some part of it, to the general public. In Europe, it's quite different. Things are moving a lot right now. And to give you an example, we are working in partnership with Waze. So GPS is clearly an Internet of Things sensor. And so the city of Lille and several cities in France, if you know Lille, they are doing a partnership with Waze, and they exchange the data with Waze. So Waze gives them the data of the traffic so that the city can better monitor the traffic in the city, and it's a great tool for them in terms of urban planning, because they are able to know what light to fix in how to prioritize road work and so on. That's really important for the city. But and in exchange, they give Waze the schedule of the road work and any kind of information that can help Waze to better serve their customers. And in that case, the data are not available to the public. It's part of Waze license. It's not open data, and what they are trying to figure out is there a way to aggregate some part of the data to release them to the public? But it's maybe something we'll see in the future. But for now, it's a good first step to help the citizen and to improve the traffic.
And what about Asia? Do you have much experience with Asia in terms of where they are?
Asia is still a prospective market for us. I don't know much about it, so to be fair, I would say I don't know.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing at OpenDataSoft now?
Yeah. So I'm Nicolas. I've been working at OpenDataSoft for a bit more than 3 years now. Before that, I was freelance in open data, and I've done everything in in the data world before.
Okay.
At OpenDataSoft, so as I said, we are building a software that allow customers to share the data, and sharing is a whole spectrum going from internally and privately share some data with your coworkers to release data to every citizen and everybody online, and that's what we call open data. And we try to, and from the beginning, we've been working on that full spectrum, and we believe that any kind of sharing improves society. It's the society will be better if people share more data. And it's important for us to work with both private and public sectors, whereas most of our competitors have been working only with public sector, for example, on open data, or mostly private sector for other solutions. We believe that on the same territory, different entities will work on the same issues, and it doesn't matter if they are public or private. At some point, they will have to share some data to be more efficient, to take better decision, and yeah, that's why we are building a real data network, and we are focusing on the whole spectrum of sharing. And my job is to create out of those data, and mostly those the data that are open. My job is, with my team, would be to create a data network so that our customers not only use our solution to make their data available, but also enrich their own data with data from other organizations and other open data, for example.
Okay. Okay. And now, when you describe a data network is as a pretty general term. Does this mean what does it mean more concretely? A data network?
Yeah. So more concretely, all of our customers that make their data open, and so it's still it's not the whole part of all the data that are on OpenDataSoft, but once a data set is open, it goes into the data network, and so anybody can access it. So if you go to data.opendatasoft.com, for example, it's some kind of gateway to that network, and you can see the whole catalog. So it's about 13,000 people data sets right now, and yeah, so that's the first idea. Just make all the data available in the same place with the same API. And based on that, our job with the network itself is to make it easy for our customers on top of that network to, for example, join their own data with some referential data. If you have data that are geolocated with cities in it, or I don't know, streets or counties, you may want to get the population into that county. You may want to get the unemployment rate, and because that will have some kind of implication in terms of business, in terms of decision. So if you want to improve your data and enrich your data, at some point you'll have to bring data from the external world to your data, and we try to make that really easy. Another way, so join between two data sets is obviously a good way to do that. You can think also, we have a map builder, because we are targeting business people that don't really know how to create map out of some data. So we want to make the data easy to see on a map, because that's what we are used to. That's how we take better decision, and I think it's a good way to analyze the data. And for example, you are able on OpenDataSoft to visualize your data on a map, and add a few layers of data already available, already cleaned, directly on your maps.
Okay. No, I want to talk about this joining in a little bit more detail, but more fundamentally, we've had a few data marts or data exchanges on the podcast so far, and They made kind of a portal, and then you subscribe, and sometimes you're just subscribing to a feed. Sometimes you're using an actual API. Is that exactly what you're doing, or is it different?
So what we do is, and we will talk a little bit about technical stuff, but we index the data. We basically use Elasticsearch, and we index all the data into the platform so that people can already use the data. Mm-hmm. Most of the data marketplace that we've seen, you have some kind of collection of download links or sometime API or it can be different. For us, every data set is available through the same API, and every data is readily available. And for now, we don't collect fees on the data. That's not something we want to do right now. Mm-hmm. And the main reason would be that we don't believe that the marketplace jobs to value the data and to give a price on some data, and we want to focus on make the data available, and we believe that some that kind of marketplace feature would arrive by themselves when people will actually connect their data to between themselves.
Now, so are you saying that all the data is free, or you're saying you're just not the middleman and you expect the buyer and the seller to connect and negotiate a price?
Yeah. So the data are free on the platform, and free as a beer, and they're open. So we put on the data network only data that have a license that allow you to use the data. What can be managed by our customers is how much API call you will be able to make on that data set, on that point of the API. So I think that's the best way to do it, because once somebody has reached a quota limit, you can start to discuss and actually negotiate on what would be a good price and what would be the best way to go further, because people that share the data to the public as open obviously want something from it, and what they most of the time want is more usage. They want people to build apps. They want people to reuse the data so that they will become a good ecosystem. So usually it's a win-win situation where people just have to negotiate, and there are some costs into sharing the data. How can we do? And we do believe that there is we are seeing a real commoditization of data in the world. You can get data about basically anybody through your service. You can get in most countries, you can get all your reference data available and open online. So we don't want to focus on that part right now, because we don't think that's where the friction is. We do believe that the friction is mostly in the search, knowing that the data are available, having access to good quality data. So that's what we are working right now.
Okay. All right. No, I want to talk more on the technicalities of it, but I want to go back to the motivation.
Yep.
So I can understand the motivation of going to your site and collecting the data, because we want to use external data to, like you said, augment our internal data, let's say coming from our sensors. So that makes sense. Okay, there was a little bit of money potentially in there, but you were mentioning some other things as well. So what's the motivation for a company to put their data on your network or is there anything more motivation other than the money, or maybe talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's what we call smartness, is that you go from as an organization, you probably want to go from a world where you just provide data to somebody into a world where you build an ecosystem. Let me tell you the story of so the company is French. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but so we know a lot about the French data ecosystem, and the French NOAA, so the weather organization, France, used to make the data available through a quite huge fees. And at some point, so nobody actually used French because the data were available through NOAA. And at some point, they figured out that in the mountain, in the Alps, there were one guy who in the house of his parents, so he get like a 3 ADSL line and a huge hair system to do that, but he recalculated by himself the weather models on his region. So the weather organization in France called Météo France, they figured out that one guy with no engineering skills, no diploma and no formation, no training, was able to calculate his own model because he wanted to have some precise weather data for free. Well, for free, without the internet cost, obviously, but to do some kind of wind sport in the mountain. So they understood that just one guy can do the job of I don't know how much there are, but like let's say 10,000 people in weather data, which is something that's not trivial, but yeah, technology advance and calculation performance advance, and they figured out that it was some kind of problem for them because all their funding comes from the fact that there's only one able to do that right. So they decided to remove the fees from most of the data and make them available to the public through open data. And they are not a customer of OpenDataSoft, but obviously we use that data. And I think the motivation behind that was to keep your position at the center of the ecosystem. If you are only looking for money and short-term money, you can miss that position, and that's a position that's important. And I think what most startups and companies in Silicon Valley have shown to the world is that if you want to make money on internet, you will have at some point to deliver more value than what you collect, and that's what Amazon does. That's what Uber does. They get fees a lot, but they build an ecosystem before getting money from it. And I think most people are starting to understand that and trying to figure out how to create an ecosystem, how to be at the center of what's happening in your industry.
So what you're saying is, to use your terminology, they're building an ecosystem. The motivation is to build an ecosystem in order to have others take a look at the data and help define or create value with that data. Then they can then use those ideas and modify their own services or modify their own products. Is that about what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That.
Okay. And so have you found this is like a big motivator, and this requires then the people that are using the data to kind of give back, and their motivation to give back is fame and notoriety, or what's the motivation to actually give back something to these data givers?
I think it can depend, but the incentives there are quite common, and you probably talk about it in other podcasts before, but there is no clean data. Just doesn't. Yes. And making it's like there is no software without bug into it. And when you make your source code open, there are more people using it, looking at it, exploring side effects and that kind of things. And that's a good way to improve the global quality because everybody shares the same incentives of having a good source code. And I think it's pretty much the same with data. And the main the main incentive is to have a better quality data. Another thing that we've seen with our experience is that when you make your data open, it first helps most of the other people in your own organization. And if you read that memo about, from Jeff Bezos about how to build to make Amazon into a platform, it started by you want to make every services available through an API, as if somebody from exterior will at some point use that API. And it's good practice to build something even within an organization with the quality requirements of what you would do for the world. So we are seeing a lot of our customers that just even before creating that ecosystem, just start to have a better data, better process, people that communicate within the organization, a better understanding of what's happening with their data and who has access to what. And it's always something good.
Yeah. No, and this is it's a huge issue that I now want to talk about is, well, the better data basically means the clean data. And as you're aware, and most people listening, a very big part of a data scientist's job, and we'll say 70 to 80% of their time, is this process of cleaning the data, normalizing it, regularizing it, and putting it into a form that it can then be used. It could be analyzed by analytics or AI or whatever the case is. So right now, I guess my question is, the data that's coming into OpenDataSoft's network, it's raw and then gets transformed by people that are using it, and then they post the transformed data or the cleaner or the better data there as well, and then others can then subscribe or use the API to go after the better data. Is that kind of how the ecosystem's used? Because there's so much work that goes into a lot of I guess really where I'm coming from is a lot of the data that's available in the data marts, or I would imagine available on your network, are available direct from the source. But if you go direct from the source, you're going to have to do this work yourself to take that original data and transform it into something, that's useful for your, or let's just say the cleaning, the regularization, the normalization of that data. I would think part of the value proposition for using a network like yours would be to, minimize that time, that 70 to 80% of the time. Are you finding that, or how are you approaching that, or am I kind of in the right direction? Yeah,
that's exactly one of our huge topic right now, and as you said, it's really important for the people that come into the network, be there either random people online or our customers that also use the network. They want to find good quality data, and we do several things around that. As you say, the community can work. You can publish data on OpenDataSoft even if it's dirty, because it's say in advance if the data are dirty. You can do it, but it won't serve and people won't use it. So I think there is a good incentive to clean your data before publishing them on OpenDataSoft. And what we do around that is that OpenDataSoft comes with a complete ETL that allow you to just connect to a source, because most of the time when you are talking about Internet of Things, what's interesting is real-time data. And you don't want, as a developer, to have to clean all the data all the time when you want to reuse the data. So that's why OpenDataSoft comes with an ETL. You want to be able directly into the platform to connect the data, clean them, process them, enrich them. You can join the data, as I said, but so you can obviously do a lot of stuff before publishing the data. And once the data are published, the new data coming in real time will go through the same processing again. So we are sure that the data are always clean, always in the same with the same schema and so on. So as you said, I think there are two ways in improving the quality of a data network like that. First is tooling. You want to give people an easy way to clean their data, and the second one would be the community. Allow people to. That's principle of open source. You let people either fork or just contribute to the data. You try to make that community work, and either directly into the data and sharing data already cleaned, for example, but also you let people contact the publisher of the data. Most of the time, I'd say it's data quality comes from the fact that you haven't seen something because it's an exception, because you will clean most of when you publish data, it will be basically quite clean, but problems comes from exception and errors, bugs and everything. And just you let people communicate between each other, and that's how you improve data quality.
Okay. And for everyone, ETL, what Nicolas mentioned, that's the extract, transform, load. And I think what you're saying is that you provide the tools to allow others or the originator of the data to extract it, and to extract it from, let's say, its original form, transform it into another form. And this transformation is where the normalization happens, the regularization happens, and then load into another form that can be used by whatever tool. And then in the case of real time, I think what you're saying is you can develop that pipeline so that it then applies the same operations for the extract, the transform, and the load into real-time data. There might be a little bit of a lag there, but then when someone else has done that, assuming the loading part is compatible with with the products you're using, then you can tap directly into the source, and it'll be nice, clean, and clean data. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, so okay. So I think what you're saying, the value proposition here is one of them is having this clean data, but you're following a lot of the open source methodologies, in the sense of being able to make it wide open, allow other people to contribute, like you said, to fork to it. And maybe I should just ask, just I think for completeness, but why are people even using external data? Let's just, why is that even important in the first place? Why are they going through all this?
So let me give you an example. Any kind of situation where you work in the industry, for example, weather will be a key component of your business model, and we've got customers, huge customers in the industry, where a difference of 1 degree Celsius would change everything into their production, and so that's really important for them to know the weather and to make the data, the weather data available to the whole company. So we've got that company that has created an internal data hub where they gather a lot of external open data sources and make them available and clean and well described to their more than 200,000 collaborators within, I say, 70 countries. So that's huge. Okay. And you can't create your own data for everything. You can gather. You're not a weather data company. Right. It's a job in itself. People are competent doing that. You need expertise. You need experience. You need everything. At some point, it's important to go fast and be efficient in getting data from the external world and improving your business. And you want to rely on good sources, well described, with clean data, and I think that's quite important. I think most of the businesses today already use a lot of external data in most activities. At some point, you will even just go to Wikipedia, see the number of people, inhabitants in one city, or that kind of things. What I think can be done differently with OpenDataSoft and other new solution on the market is that you can do it just once for the whole company. You don't have people that do exactly the same things every day because they are not able, they don't have the skills to automate that process. They don't know all the other people within the same organization that do the same things.
Sure.
And when you have hundreds of people doing the same things every day into a company, it becomes a business issue of just having one person doing the job and automatize it and make the data available to everybody within the company. So that first step is really the first one, the most easy to understand.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Go ahead.
And if you want to go a bit further, what you can say is that I think business and people behavior in the world is changing faster and faster. And what you want is not to be the best in your domain and stay the best, as Kodak did, or Nokia at some point. You have to be much faster than that. And we do believe that it's not bad by analyzing a huge amount of data, but it's much it's probably because thanks to a good analysis of small data, but data that will matter, that you will be able to do that. You don't want to do macro things in terms of changing business, because everybody can say that in 20 years there will be a lot of business around old people or automatization of cars, but it's not like that you will change your own business, and you will be able to adapt. But it's much rather than in trying to find the small effects and small trends that will actually matter in 20 years. And we also believe that it's still the case today that in most organizations, it's only a couple of people that do that prospective job, and I think those people are the more because they are most of the time in the top of the organization, they don't have really an incentive for the business to change a lot, and I think that puts every organization in danger. And when you provide data and you make the data available to your whole company, to everybody within the company, I think it's the best way to make the curious people, the people with ideas, people that want to innovate, able to do it. And you always have bright and motivated people within your organization. You just want to give them and provide them everything they need to actually build stuff and innovate quickly.
Yeah, no, I like that. And, I think, the obvious answer is kind of what you were saying in the first step, and it's related to data fusion and what you were saying earlier, bringing different data sets together, is that when you're creating value, you may not have all the data that you need to create that value. And so it makes a lot of sense. Then you were saying, well, efficiency wise, why recreate the wheel, when others have done it? But I like the last point that you're bringing up here. And I think that is this ethos of the open source kind of community mentality, is that innovation, if you expose everything to many different like that like that person living in his parents' house with the power to develop these new weather models, which, by the way, is very, very, very sophisticated. Yeah. Then innovation bubbles up. If you expose it, innovation bubbles up, and invention bubbles up as well. And so you may get that's a good motivator for providing your data and putting it on a source like this, and that's important, because then, like you said, then it's like an ecosystem. There's motivation for the people that are putting the data up. And that was kind of the last thing that we just talked about. And then there's motivation for people that are using the data. That was the first 2 points that we brought up, and it makes a nice, happy, makes a valuable ecosystem. So yeah, no, I like that. Let's make this more concrete. So let's say that the person listening to us right now has a Internet of Things product or service, and they need to incorporate weather data into it. What would be the steps that they'd go through concretely? And then, we can talk technically now, but what would be the steps that they have to go through to incorporate, let's say, this French data or this French weather data? I also know the weather, is it the Weather Channel now? The Weather Channel provides the data as well. But what are the steps they'd have to actually go through to start using this data within their product or service?
Yeah, so I mean, the first obvious step would be, where do you want to go?
Yeah, so let's say they identify, they know the data they want, and so I guess they're going to use your Elasticsearch, right, to kind of identify the data class, or they know the data class, and then they have to identify the data stream, or I'm not sure if that's what you call it.
Yeah, so they wouldn't. So yeah, Elasticsearch is the underlying technology, but they wouldn't use it because, as I said, we want to do a platform for business people, and business people don't know much about Elasticsearch. So we have a UI and everything to search and get to the data. So let's say, for example, you have a sensors that an Internet of Things project that will provide you information about people. For example, in the street, number of people in the street going passing by one shop, for example, and you want to analyze what's going on and how that can relate to the business. So what you probably want to do, the first steps would be to first get your data into OpenDataSoft, and based on the format and everything, should be quite trivial, but you never know. But most of the time it's quite trivial, and especially with data coming from Internet of Things, because everything goes out in the same format, and it's quite it doesn't have a lot of human intervention. That's humans that break data all the time. And so first step would be to get your sensor data into the platform, your data.
But I'm talking more the other way, Nicolas. I'm talking about using that data. So are you on that track, or not so much subscribing, or not so much publishing data, but subscribing to it?
Yeah. So you want to get your data into the platform, and then the idea would be to either join your data, or you just want. I think the first thing I would do would be to create a chart with your business data, your sensor data, and your weather data, and see if you can just see some correlation between them. Is the weather important? Because if you are in a mall, if you're in the street, what kind of street? If you're in Europe or in the US, it will be different. So the first step will be that you will get the data like that, and to get weather data, it's just there. You don't even have to be a customer of OpenDataSoft. You just go to our data network and search for weather, and you can filter the data to the country or city you're in, and just start filtering the data to the good period of time, and you're good to go. I think that would be the first way to do it.
Okay, so you identify the data that you want. There's going to be some sort of an ID associated with that data, and then you're going to use the API within your product to then, and with that identifier, that ID, to then access that data stream. Yeah. Is that the kind of the sequence?
Here, you don't even have an ID because the ID would be a timestamp, and you want to compare a time series between your business, your sensors, and weather, and you don't have to download the data right away. What we and that's a good question, because most of the solution line of data network, you have at some point to download the data and to bring them into your system, and then you start to figure it out if the data are useful or not. And we wanted to remove those steps, and you can give a look to the data online directly. You can create maps, you can create charts. You want to be sure when you search for some data, you want to be sure that the information you are looking to is actually into the data. So even before in the sequence, even before downloading the data and doing something with it, you can just check if the data looks useful or not.
Right. No, that makes sense. But getting back to downloading the data or tapping into the data, how do you? I mean, so you're doing this programmatically. You're doing this with the API, or am I misunderstanding this? And if you're doing it with the API, you somehow have to identify what data you're downloading or what data you're tapping into.
Yeah, we provide an API to all of our data. The catalog by itself, and also every record within each dataset. And what I was saying, that before downloading the data, you can search for it. So we have a catalog online with all the data exposed to everybody. And so you can
look at it as well and visualize it perhaps in a few different ways to decide whether you want to go through the trouble. Okay.
Exactly. You have the metadata, the description of the data by the publisher of the data, and that should help you in understanding if the data will be useful or not. And after that, we do believe that every people that will use data have their favorite tools, their own way to do, their favorite language, and so we provide downloads in the most common formats, plus an access to the API, because it shouldn't matter how the data are as an output.
So explain to me then, the difference between, I can understand if you identify the data source and then you download it and then you're in your own little world and you use it. What's the API used for then? Is the API used to do that download, or is it used for other things?
Oh, the API. So in the sequence, most of the time when you want to build an app, for example, based on some data, and the data are in real time, what you probably want to do is to download a subtract of the data, do your implementation, do your test, do everything you want, and when it works, you just want the data as fresh as possible, and that's the moment where you will use our API. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. So you download it, even if it's just an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file. You look at it. First of all, you can visualize it, on your platform. Then you can download it. Maybe then start looking at it with your tools. And once you're satisfied that it meets your requirements and it's what you're looking for, you can then use an API, like you said, to tap into the fresh data, because this is going to be generally time series data, I guess, right? Exactly. And then the API then taps into that, and then it then brings it into the application, or brings it in. I guess it just brings it into the application, and from there, you're going to do whatever you're going to do with it. Is that it? Or is there any steps that are missing?
Exactly. I have to complete the answer. I would say that a lot of our customers just don't use their own system to do something with the data. We've built a number of tools that allow you to do something with the data, like creating dashboard, maps, charts, that kind of stuff. And our customers are also building tools to provide to their customers, to provide value to their customers. And obviously, when you create a dashboard within OpenDataSoft, it will use the API, but you won't know that you won't see that it uses the API.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I can see there's different use cases. One use case could be to create a custom dashboard, like you're saying. It kind of hides all that from behind the scenes. the other case that I was originally talking about, we're actually using that data within an application, within the company's software. And in that case, you're going to need to use that API, tap directly into it, and then I suppose use it in real time, whatever
Exactly.
way you're going to use it.
And to give you an example, we got that customer called CityLog, and what they do, they monitor a highway. So thanks to cameras, they are able to count the number of vehicles, their speed within, if it's a car, a truck, or anything, a bus, for example. And their customers are the highway operators. And for example, in the city of Atlanta, they work, I think it's with the city, but what they do is they use our platform to collect the data from the sensors. So they push the data to OpenDataSoft. Then they they've created a dashboard based on those data. Where you bring, for example, you can here just bring the data from weather. You want to provide a dashboard that allows the city to take good decisions. So in the same dashboard you can have data about the traffic itself, but also about air quality, for example, or weather or anything. And they give that access to that dashboard to their customers. So they provide value to their customers, but their customers, they may want to use that dashboard, but they also probably want to go further and explore more of the data. And I think that's something that will become quite common in most contracts. You want some value created, the highway monitoring, but you also want data behind the monitoring, and you probably want to verify the data and go further with the data. And I think that's a really something that will become common in the coming years within each contract. And in that case, that customer, CityLog, is able to provide a dashboard plus the data behind it, plus an API, because it's basically the same API, to their customers. So basically, we help our customer to provide value to their customers by sharing data.
Yeah, no, I like it. And what Nicolas is kind of describing here is a hierarchical data value structure, in a sense of you create value from let's say, data source A, you create data source B by maybe creating metadata based on data source A. So now you've added a little bit more value. And then data source C could create even more value by creating metadata about the metadata about source A. And so it's kind of creating data about the data. There's a lot of value there. And kind of what you're saying is you can kind of chain this together, and that's just another way of illustrating how you can use this data to create a lot of value for both the buyers and the sellers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I like that. Well, let's you talked about contracts, so I do want to talk, kind of, I know we're talking security now and privacy at the very end, and we should have done it right from the very beginning. But I want to talk a little bit about GDPR. I want to talk about privacy. Maybe, I guess this is only going to be with respect to consumer-based data. But speaking of contracts, what's in the contract? Are you using any distributed ledger technology to ensure that people that enter the contract are using the data in the right way? Maybe just explain a little bit on, the tech for tracking it, and just what's in a contract and how you technically track it, if at all.
Yeah, so we track, basically we since all the data sets are indexed through the same API, we track everything that happens into that API. So that's most of our monitoring come from that. We measure every usage made of every data set at network, and we use those data for us at OpenDataSoft to improve the network, but we also provide those monitoring data to the owner of the data and to our customers that are the one who publish the data, so that they can check that everything is fine, and there is no usage that shouldn't be there at some point. And what I haven't said before is that so I talked about the whole spectrum of sharing, and that implies a huge security layer. And if you figure an Excel file, what we do is we allow our customers to define who has access to what at the scale of the cell of an Excel file. That team has access to those columns, and that's the kind of logic we want to have. And you can define the own security, the permission of your data, and you can monitor what's happening behind it. So that's pretty much what we do on that question.
Yeah, so you're monitoring the usage of the data and ensuring that, and what people are doing with the data, ensuring that it matches with the contract of what they're supposed to be allowed to use the data.
Yeah,
you're also measuring then the number of API calls, because you mentioned that earlier in our discussion. In case there is a monetization discussion, then you're measuring how often they use the data as well, and then you can provide that to the data owners as well.
Yeah, for sure, and much more than that, because you want to you just don't want to know the number of API call, but the nature of the API call, and you can because we think that we think it's maybe a kind of paradox, but we think that data is an whole process of commoditization, but we also think that we will see more and more business cases around data sharing, and for now, most of the time, when you got access to when you paid for some data, you had access to either the whole database or you paid for the update of the database, and I think it's some kind of old way to do, and we do believe that in the future you will be able to pay. Maybe you will have the historical data available for free in open data, but if you want the last real-time data, you will have to pay. So it can be that, and you can check you can provide access to the data based on the timestamp of the data, that kind of thing. You could imagine paying for several countries, several customers. You can imagine everything, and obviously you want to be able, by design, to provide access only to the people who have either paid or who have the right to get to the data, and right. You want to monitor that. So you have to be able to. I think that's even a good way to even imagine your business model around the data. You can make the data open and see, okay, people are using the data for the whole world, but we see that what's more interesting to people is data in Sweden or in UK, and you just maybe want to put a fees on just the data for the UK, for example, and you can imagine everything. The idea is to go fast and to be able to test your business model around data, and to be able to provide a dashboard in minutes, to provide API to monitor everything, and I think that's the new way to discover business cases around data.
Yeah, no, I like it, and it's kind of your. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about innovation and invention, and in this case, you're extending it now to business model.
Yep.
I guess business model innovation and intervention, exactly. And using this platform as a way to kind of test it. Just test the situation. So, lastly, GDPR, privately identifiable information. Is there any of that? Do you have to worry about GDPR, or is this mostly going to be? Not with respect to any person in particular. Are there any GDPR issues that we need to worry about?
Yeah, you always have to worry about GDPR.
Yeah, but I meant for the data that you collect.
So not that much, because most of the time we don't collect data about people. It's really rare, and when our customers collect data about people, they know that they have to be careful of what they do with it, and we have so the CNIL. CNIL is the French authority for GDPR, and so we've got a label with them. We've been labeled because we wanted to be able to provide some help to our customers into the way they handle their data and what they do with it, and we do believe that it's really important for them to not to do anything wrong with the data, and especially when you talk about people behind it.
Yeah. So what you're saying is there isn't that much data about people or personally identifiable information about people.
Yeah.
But when there is, how is that dealt with? Is that in the contract again, and basically left for the consumer of the data?
It's mostly a contract, and also by design, you're able to, there's some stuff you're not able to do and things you can do. For example, you can anonymize maps. Like if you have data about people, you may want to just provide a circle rather than a point, so that you are not sure about where the people are exactly, that kind of things. But I would say that the most important thing for us around GDPR is not to build the contract, but rather to help our customers, because since we are in the data business, we are able to we have both experience and knowledge and know-how around data and around GDPR. So the first thing for us would be to provide help and to help our customers better understand those issues and better understand what they can do with it, and how to better manage their data.
So you provide these type of services as part of the platform?
Yep, that's
people can call customer support or email customer support, so to speak.
Yeah, sure. We have a customer support, but we also have we are talking here about big projects and big customers, and one of the biggest team at OpenDataSoft is a customer success team, which is not a consulting team. It's a team that is here to make our customers autonomous with the platform and to help them in their everyday question about data. So if some customer has a question about GDPR, what should I do with, for example, that data set that collect data about individuals, or that CRM data, what can I do with it? And we will be there to remind them what's said into GDPR, and mostly what to do with it. What would be the best way to do something with the data without being outlaw.
No. It sounds like obviously a very useful resource. But I guess the question that comes to my mind is, who's paying for all this? I mean, what is OpenDataSoft's business model? If you're not really charging for data and that's being done, peer to peer, who pays your salary or what pays your salary, for example?
Yep.
What pays for all this to work?
So it's the publisher of the data that pays for the platform. They pay for a tool that allows you to do a lot of stuff with your data and around data sharing. We are a data sharing tool, and it comes with a lot of features that allow you to clean, protect, and share your data. And they pay for it because it's the tool that will allow them to explore for new business model, develop their part into the ecosystem, and as you can imagine, so it's SaaS, and the business model is based mostly it's based on size of the data you will have on the platform and stage made from it. So the more you use the API, the more you will pay. Basically, that's the main idea.
Interesting. Okay, so it's a publisher-based business model rather than a subscriber-based business model.
Exactly. And
excellent.
And the business model, we do believe that the marketplace for data doesn't exist yet. There is no. It may have some. You may find some marketplace around very specific use cases or sector or industry, but the general data marketplace, it's not something that exists because you would have to make the subscriber of the data pay for it, and
right.
Don't believe it's time for that, and we don't believe that anybody can say what's the value of some data. And what we try to build is the platform where our customers are able to define the own value of their own data and to create their own business model around the data. And yeah, we do believe that's the best way to develop that kind of marketplace.
Interesting. This goes back to your point of the raw data being commoditized, and so it's difficult to charge for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Nicolas. Well, that was very informative.
Thanks.
Where can people find out more about you and OpenDataSoft?
I'd say So since we talked a lot about the data network, the best way would be to go to data.opendatasoft.com. That's the gateway to the data. You will be able to find data, to use the API. You don't have to create any account. You don't have to sign up. And it's really the best way to just start playing with data. If you want to know more about it, you can go to just opendatasoft.com, full description, because you may want to understand how we work with both small cities and huge private companies, and we'll explain that, of course. And if they want to reach out, they can find me on Twitter at NTERPO, and you can also just drop me an email at nicolas.terpolilli@opendatasoft.com.
All right. Well, we'll put that in the show analysis notes so people don't have to stop what they're doing now and write it out. But it was a pleasure, and thanks a lot.
The pleasure was mine. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Okay. That was a good talk with Nicolas Terpolilli. This podcast goes vertical, deep diving into different topics each week. If you prefer a more horizontal and structured approach to learning IoT business and its orbiting technologies, check out my book IoT Inc., published by McGraw-Hill, or become a certified IoT professional by completing the ICIP training and certification program. For details, just go to www.iot-inc.com. Also go to www.iot-inc.com for an analysis of this episode, links to things that were mentioned during the episode, and very importantly, the episode's PDF transcript. Just search for the name of the episode or the guest. If you're new to this podcast, subscribe. That way you'll get every week's episode delivered straight to your device. Or, if you've been listening for a while, there are 3 ways you can support the show. You can leave a rating or a review on iTunes. Just go to iot-inc.com/iTunes. It only takes 1 click to leave a rating, a little bit longer to leave a review. You can share it on social. I'm on LinkedIn, to a lesser extent on Twitter. And of course, you can support this show by buying my book, IoT Inc., or the ICIP training and certification program. It's how I pay the bills. Next week's episode is Increasing Your Company's Data IQ with Its Own Datamart, with Tim Panagas of Microshare.io. I hope you can join me then. I'm your host, Bruce Sinclair. Thank you for listening. Till next week, may your path to IoT business be an open source one.
You have been listening to the IoT Inc. Business Show.